Hello and welcome to another episode of ORF US Dispatch. In this episode, we discuss Joe Biden's decision to pick Kamala Harris as his running mate and what implications that may have on US India ties under a Biden presidency. Dhruva, since the last time we spoke, Joe Biden has finally announced his running mate and it's California Senator Kamala Harris. Now, generally, a particular candidate is picked for one of three reasons. If a presidential candidate needs someone who can deliver a crucial electoral state or a bunch of states, an example of such a scenario from US history can, of course, be JFK's decision to pick LBJ because he knew he could deliver the South for him. Or second, if a candidate needs someone to get a temporary bump in the polls. An example from contemporary times can be John McCain's decision to get Sarah Palin on board to sort of contrast Barack Obama's popularity and celebrity. Or three, a reason can be that a candidate needs someone who can, after getting elected, can help them govern better. And an example of this can surely be Obama's decision to pick Biden. Obama was, of course, a one-term senator when he ran for president, so he needed someone like Biden to help him govern better, an old hand in the US Congress. In which of these three criteria or scenarios, if I can call them, do you think Joe Biden's decision to pick Kamala Harris falls?
In some ways, I think it's a mixture of all three. She has, she's somebody who brings diversity to the ticket, just given her background identity. She has a high level of name recognition amongst Democrats. Very interestingly enough, I think she has been voting on the more liberal end of things at least during her tenure as the Senate, but she's not seen as of the progressive wing of the party necessarily. She's not necessarily a darling of the left wing of the Democratic Party. So, and some people described it is both groundbreaking and a very conventional pick at the same time. And then again, she has some experience, particularly as Attorney General in California. She kind of rose up in California politics. She was being talked about even before being picked for the vice president as a potential attorney general. And so I think the expectation is that she would really focus on issues like law and order and other things, which are currently, particularly this week, significantly in focus in the United States.
Certainly, and Kamala Harris's favorability ratings, according to a recent report, are higher when compared to Mike Pence or Donald Trump, but they're even higher when compared to the favorability ratings of Joe Biden. So I'm sure Joe Biden and the Democratic ticket is going to benefit from that. But from an identity standpoint, this is an historic nomination, right? She's the first Indian American woman to be on a major party's presidential ticket. However, she has mixed roots because she's had a Jamaican father. So in many ways, you can say that she's also the first African American woman to be in the running for vice president. And particularly in context of the George Floyd protests, it seems as if her nomination and her pick has more to do with, say, the African American voter base, which constitutes about 14% of the American population, vis-a-vis the 1.2 or 1.3 million eligible Indian American voters. So what, according to you, are the many electoral advantages of having Kamala Harris on the ticket?
Yeah. So I think one is actually we now overlook it, and in some ways that's a good thing that it's become more normal. But it's still quite groundbreaking that it's a woman, first of all. And Biden did make a pledge beforehand that he would select a woman. That did narrow the field significantly of his vice presidential nominees. But she's still only the fourth woman ever on a major party ticket for Congress. Once in 1984, Geraldine Ferraro, and then Sarah Palin, Hillary Clinton as a candidate last time, and now Kamala Harris. So I think, first of all, that still brings a certain level of diversity to the ticket. Second, of course, is her somewhat extraordinary background and identity. So, she's her father's Jamaican. Her mother was originally from South India. They met in California, had two children. And so she's, appeals in that sense to both African Americans and, as she's defined it, even Asian Americans and South Asian Americans. So she's trying to project herself as even more than just an Indian American, as somebody who is groundbreaking on multiple levels. And so you see her, for example, talking about her Indian grandfather who was a civil servant. You see her talking a lot also about going to an African American, historically black college, Howard University, which she selected to go to. She's been brought out to appeal very specifically to West Indian communities, given that her father was from Jamaica. So, in some ways, she can appeal in these very different ways to different communities. In that sense, her identity is complex, but it's also, I think, seen as a force multiplier for galvanizing these votes in November.
Absolutely. I think you are right about the women factor. If you look at the 2018 midterm elections that propelled the Democrats to take control of the US House of Representatives, even then, women voters made a huge difference. So I'm sure now in 2020, for the presidential election as well, women voters are really important for the Democratic ticket. But tell me one thing. Kamala Harris's pick as Biden's running mate is being seen as a sense of paradox, that he's had her on board to sort of quote the young, disenchanted progressives, because there are little odds that a 77-year-old presidential candidate, Joe Biden, would really strike a chord with the young voters. So you need someone like Kamala Harris to maybe galvanize them. But at the same time, there's reporting that says that this is a safe bet, it's a safe pick in probably signaling to the progressive / Bernie Sanders faction of the Democratic Party that Joe Biden still controls his own nomination, his own ticket. So that's why he went for someone who's a moderate, a centrist, and not a progressive. How do you square the circle on this?
I mean, both for proponents and opponents of the Democrats, and it's interesting because, again, she doesn't fit squarely into a box. Again, if you look at her voting record, it's actually quite left. And I think that was part of an attempt to appeal to the left-wing base of the party. And yet, again, at the same time, she's not sort of clearly sort of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders type figure. And in some ways, that's also led to mixed messaging on the part of the initial attacks or criticism against her by the Republicans, which is on the one hand, you saw within a few days even of her nomination, both attacks that she was too far to the left and that she had this record as a prosecutor that was, put people in jail and was that she was a cop, Kamala the cop, and stuff like that. So, in some ways, it's sort of confusing. Is she too far to the left? Is she too far to the right? What is the message? It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next two months or so, because the race is going to get more vicious and nasty. But the fact that she doesn't quite fit into any preconceived notions quite easily. Again, maybe both a positive in some ways, in the sense that it'll blunt some of the attacks against her, but it may also be a bit of a negative in the sense that she's a little bit of everything to everybody. Then what does she actually bring to the table? So I think it still remains to be seen how much she, while initial popularity ratings were high, how much she actually galvanizes the Democratic base to come out to vote. I do think one thing that's a little bit forgotten is she started off as one of the front runners in the Democratic Party primaries, and yet her, was one of the first major candidates to withdraw, citing lack of funds. Basically, after the first debate where she made waves by going after Joe Biden, ironically. After that, she slumped in the polls and didn't do very well in the initial primaries. So, I think that's sometimes forgotten a little bit. But again, now that she's the nominee, obviously everything is back on the table.
Okay, moving to US-India ties. So the news of Kamala Harris's nomination, the way it has been covered here in India, has been euphoric. The reportage has been more than euphoric, actually. And for understandable reasons, as we discussed. It is indeed a historic nomination. However, there's also this sense in this reportage that Kamala Harris, because of her Indian-American credentials, would save the US-India bilateral dynamic from recent turbulences and tensions. Now, to my mind, that's problematic on two levels. Do we still depend on personal chemistry between the top political leadership to inform US-India bilateral ties, especially because we've seen a degree of institutionalization happening in this dynamic? And secondly, if one's identity was sort of indicative of their political stance on things, would the most vocal critics of the Modi dispensation's domestic policy be Indian American legislators on the Capitol Hill? So how do you see this, Dhruva? Do you think Kamala Harris will have a big role to play, or will she actively shape U.S.-India ties?
Well, I think, the fact is she's running for vice president, and she's running for vice president of the United States, not vice president of India. And, I think we have to sort of keep that clearly in mind. And I'd say the other major factor at play is that, her background is not as a foreign policy specialist. She, rose as somebody who was initially, on law and order and domestic issues primarily. So, I think if we take all that in mind, into consideration, her pick will not have a major impact on U.S.-India ties if the Democrats do win in November. At least certainly not initially. But Biden is somebody who is a foreign policy veteran. He was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when he was a senator. He is vice president. He has a team that is very experienced and dedicated, and has worked with him for a long time, who have quite clear views on foreign policy, and have actually articulated in some ways their broad position on India already. So, I think, Biden, I would go, primarily with what Biden's foreign policy priorities are going to be. Two, there are, as you correctly pointed out, there are structural factors at play as well. So, she herself has also, while she's spoken about her background, her family coming from India, her mother particularly, coming from India, she's spoken fondly of some of the cultural ties that, and the values that she grew up with and such, and how that influenced her outlook, particularly her grandfather. But she herself has not spoken since the nomination about the U.S.-India bilateral relationship. And that's quite understandable. I think she's trying to position herself as a candidate for America. And already, there were some conspiracy theories about her eligibility to be a nominee. It's not in her interest to actually openly embrace the U.S.-India relationship, certainly as a candidate at this point of time. So all of this is to say, I don't think she will have a major impact. If anything, I think she'll want to retain a sort of healthy distance from the U.S.-India relationship, even though she's not going to shy away from her Indian identity, because that obviously has electoral implications. I do think some of the reporting I saw, or the public views in India that she would be a big boost to U.S.-India relationship are unfounded.
Right. I think that sums it up really well. Now, before we go, one last question. The Biden campaign released its agenda for the Indian American community recently, and it spoke about what agenda it would have for the U.S.-India ties as well. Now, this sort of closely followed the Biden campaign's release of its agenda for the Muslim American community, in which there was a reference to Kashmir. And there was quite a bit of uproar on that. But now, under its agenda for India and Indian Americans, the Biden campaign has invoked the Trump administration's Indo-Pacific moniker to promise continuity. How do you read this? And what do you think is the Biden proposition for US-India ties?
Well, I think you actually see now both parties, Republicans and Democrats, trying to compete today for Indian American votes and for donations. And both candidates are trying to position themselves as, I'm a better friend of India than the other guy. This is, quite a departure. I won't overread that. The Indian American vote is still quite small numerically, but in several swing states, that's Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida, at least those three, and perhaps others, the number of Indian American voters actually are more than the margin of difference in the 2016 electoral vote. So it's not an insignificant number of votes at play right now. The fact that Biden put that out, and actually he and his campaign, including Kamala Harris, issued statements on August 15th, Independence Day this year, show that there is a very high emphasis on trying to appeal to Indian American votes. In terms of the messaging, I obviously there are different messages that will appeal to different people. But while I've written about this, while I do think we will see more scrutiny and perhaps even some slight criticism of India for its domestic policies under a Democratic administration, and particularly from Congress, should the Democrats win the Senate as well. The fact, the alternative view that somehow that will be the primary determining factor of a Democrat's foreign policy, I think is also unfounded. That is, there are structural reasons for why for why the U.S.-India strategic partnership has been growing under both Republican and Democratic presidents and administrations. So that is likely to continue. And it's, by the way, it's not just India. Again, the squeaky wheel sometimes, every time there's a Kashmir mentioned somewhere, that gets a lot of coverage in India. But the fact is, it's not just against India. There are also similar issues where human rights on the one hand and interests on the other hand come into conflict with each other in U.S. foreign policy. One of the interesting things to watch out for is Biden has said that he will host a summit of democracies should he be elected. But I don't believe that a lot of thought has gone into what that constitutes, what countries will be invited, what will be on the agenda. Will the agenda be such that people will want to attend from some of these countries? Will it be so? I think that will be an interesting space to watch, because if he really intends on global democratic cooperation, that's really impossible without some level of participation and involvement from a country like India. As the world's largest democracy. So I would look out for these things, but I don't think it is some of the coverage, again, that either Kamala Harris will be a major boost for US-India relationship on the one hand, or that the Democrats will basically gut the relationship based on some concerns about pluralism in India. Neither of those extreme scenarios is likely to play out.
All right, that's all for this episode. Until next time, take care and stay safe.